So we want to take a quick look back, seeing where we started from and then where we are now, and then looking forward. And really, that will be the majority of the presentation. Is where do we want to go? What can we do, and what we can achieve together with U.S. partners. So leading up to the point. As the funders assessed their investments in the past, they realized that there were some basic fundamental items that they had not paid attention to, and so they decided to fund excellence in breeding as a platform to really help bringing in some of the fundamental parts of breeding to the forefront and really help modernize the CGIAR in breeding. So one of the challenges that they saw was that the current rates of production increases in the farmers' field were not met. They didn't meet the demand. So they hired a great team from University of Queensland, led by Chris Mavridis, who did basically an evaluation of the breeding programs. So they came up with BPAT reviews that were conducted. Primarily, they started out with the CG, and then also within the last year and a half, they've been also visiting some of our national partners and assessing them as well. And they were able to really look at some of the fundamentals of the breeding programs and what we need to focus on to really improve and make changes to accelerate genetic gain. So they saw opportunities for implementing technologies and also different approaches and methodologies to really focus on. So they really wanted to see high rates of genetic gain for the farmers, and the variety that would then result in variety turnover. And they have they're tremendously supportive in helping us to deliver on this. So that's been really our objective here to achieve that. So production gains are critical to then basically be able to deliver that to the farmer's field. As an example, for wheat and maize, annualized production increases must achieve 1.7% to prevent price rises and hunger, as a result of that. And so, as you look at this graph, besides increasing production, we also, are dealing with climate change, with new diseases, water scarcity, and nutrient and energy deficiencies. So what we need to do is really up our game to be able to deliver on that. And so, but it's not only the staples, meaning the grain staples that we need to focus on. Also, the roots and tubers are of importance, and then the legume crops that provides protein source. And so really all these areas need to be covered to deliver and relieve some of the challenges that we face. So the funders, they have 6 requests, and that they made very explicit. Really understanding the market segments is critical, and then aligning the breeding pipelines according to these market segments, and then develop investment cases that can support these breeding pipelines, and then designing these product profiles that will determine the direction of these breeding pipelines. So they also want us to ensure that there's incentivization of breeding teams and individuals aligned with the genetic gain and variety turnover. So basically bringing this all the way up to center management. and then looking at the effective delivery mechanism of varieties from breeding programs to the farmers. You know, the kind of that last step, and this is really where, you know, we as CG really need to work closely with our national partners to achieve that. And then increasing rate of genetic gain, obviously, and then commitment to shared services. Tremendous benefits, and later on in the sessions you will learn more about shared services. And then working with our national partners and developing breeding networks and helping the national partners in developing their capacity. So then, you know, you can ask, how does that look like? So right now we're in it together. You know, it's a vital initiative. There's a lot of support from this consortium of funders to modernize the CGR and the National Partner Breeding Project. And as we came together last year in Schiphol, in there, Amsterdam, we really went and looked at the goal. And so we decided that CGIAR and National Partner Breeding Networks need to generate a genetic gain of 1.5% or higher per annum, and that the average area weighted age of varieties in farmer fields would be less than 10 years. So there's a link here that some of you probably have seen, and I can refer you to learn more about what we discussed during that meeting. So modernization is really, you know, implementation of change, and that has several different facets to it. To be really successful, you know, we need to have clear lines of accountability, who is doing what, and then sponsorship, and especially sponsorship at the centers from the senior leadership. And I can tell you that many of the leadership are on board with this. And then also, of course, technical support. You know, what do you need to upgrade your breeding program technically to deliver on this accelerated genetic gain, and financial support. So there are several mechanisms. One is through crops to end hunger. You know, EIB disperses some of these resources, and we, you know, work with you to ensure that the investments are directly benefiting the breeding programs in a meaningful way. And then really developing standards and a unified platform, because that is how we can work together in a more effective way. You know, I know that among the breeding programs, there's several different standards and ways of doing things. And by you know, deciding on a common standard and focusing on unified platforms, we can be so much more effective to deliver this genetic gain. And that doesn't mean that, you know, one system or one standard is worse or better than another. It is really, you know, bringing it together really helps the whole organization unify around a process that can more effectively reach our goal. And then, of course, you know, as we go through changes, it also has an effect on us emotionally. You know, change is always associated with a little discomfort, and you know, what is the new world going to look like within this framework of change. And so we need to make sure that we work together with you through this and achieve that. So now, in order to implement change, we need to know what the goals are, and so we need to have a plan, and that is based on these improvement plans. You know, all the breeding organizations submitted these improvement plans last year. You know, and we need to, and those are not set in stone. So this is, you know, those are, so to speak, the first iteration. Let's take a look at that now that we've gained additional understanding of what we need to achieve. And then together we can you know, look at them and modify them if that is necessary to achieve the goals. So, but we will look at these improvement plans as the basis for each of the programs at the centers. So to really achieve success, what are some of the components that are part of that? So we need to have accountability. So there are breeding leads that were appointed by each of the DGs at the centers, and they're accountable for developing the plans and then driving that implementation. And then excellence in breeding, we're managed to monitor the progress and to provide support, to really partner with you to see if there are any gaps, to really then provide the technical support or financial support if necessary, or tools, etc., to really help you achieve your goals. And then the sponsorship of modernization initiative is we have full endorsement from all the funders, and we need sponsorship also of the director generals, of the director generals of deputy director generals of research, the breeding leads, the module leads, etc. And we really, it's kind of a partnership in that sense. We all need to make sure that we're working towards the same goals. Again, the technical support, we are here, Excellence in Breeding. We have a tremendous team of technical competency and people that can help you achieve that. And I encourage people to reach out to some of these module leads or to us, Michael, Quinn, or myself, to make sure that you get the support that you need. And then financial support. The Crops and the Hunger funding is managed by Excellence in Breeding, and it really is focused on modernization of the breeding programs, and not just for the CGIAR, but also it spills over into our national partners. And then also support for non-technical aspect to help you through this change. So we're working and contracting with change management professionals to really help the breeding leads or the programs to work through this change. And that is something new we just trying now. So really looking forward, implementation of change. How are we going to achieve and respond to the 6 funders' requests? So first we need to know what we're focusing on. So we want to develop a pipeline investment case. And to do that, efficiently, effectively, and knowing the parameters, we need to define the market segments. So, because that will help us realize what the impact can be. So then the next step in that would be mapping the breeding pipelines to the market segments. So then that will result in developing a pipeline investment case. And that will then be the unit investment. So we need to understand the cost of that breeding pipeline, and that needs to be presented as an integral part of this investment case. And then eventually where we want to go to is that we can look at every breeding activity and calculate the cost of some of these to help in the optimization process of these breeding pipelines. And so I know this is an ongoing process, and we're working with you to see what we need to have in place to achieve that, the costing of all these individual operations. But and then developing product profiles for each market segment, and that is, again, it's a partnership with socioeconomists, the gender specialists, the nutritionists, climatologists, to really make sure that as we design this product profile, it will be able to deliver on what is needed by the end user, the farmer, the processor, the consumer. So we want to incentivize this process, and the breeding teams and individual scientists are assessed through the BPAT report, for example, and we then look at the contributions we can bring to achieve genetic gain and achieve greater variety turnover, and extend that to our national partners. So to do that, really, we need to have a way to assess progress, and putting kind of a health check of the programs in place so that we can see how fast we can move along. And so the way we want to do that is to calculate genetic gains in a standardized way. And we have Younghua that recently joined. She's working together also with Eduardo to come up with how to most effectively do that and to have it kind of a standardized way. And so we're looking at calculating genetic gains on an annual basis, and as this breeding schematics are changed, then having a redesigned breeding schema to again then adjust and recalculate the genetic gain according to these changes. So essential is that we can calculate blobs and ensure that there are sufficient checks over years that can be used as a reference to help in these calculations. So we're also looking at an effective delivery mechanism. We want to make sure that we work with the seed sector. That can be our national partners or private sector partners or other NGOs, etc., other programs. And so that we then can focus on effectively delivery of these new products from the breeding programs that will reach the farmer. And so there's a process we need to focus on to make sure that we can have a high quality handover from the breeding programs to the seed multiplication and to the seed producers. So, making sure, for example, that there's high quality pure seed stock coming out of the breeding programs that then can be multiplied, breeder seed can be produced, and then eventually foundation seed that form the basis of the seed production pipelines. And then we need to ensure that there's, clear data that is associated with this handover, that there's a good description of what this new variety or this new line can offer to our partners and to the farmer. And then also, target areas of where it's supposed to be delivered. So let's look at what we as Excellence in Breeding, what we want to focus on to increase the rate of genetic gain. And many of the breeding programs that are within the CG are also even some of our national partners. As you saw in that presentation by Maxwell, is really one of the first things is shortening the breeding cycle, because as you will understand, as you see here in the breeder's equation or the genetic gains equation, the cycle time is in the denominator of this formula, and so it has the greatest impact. And then investment in the accuracy of trials, especially in the early generations, because that really helps for the next cycle of selection, because those out of that early generation testing the next parents will come for the next cycle of crosses. So now multi-location trials in the early generations is predictive of the performance that you see in the target environments, and so across years, and then including the managed environments, where you focus on disease screening, etc., or abiotic components. And then really for the breeding part, focusing on population improvement rather than product development. So for breeding to reach that genetic gain. And so basically it requires a compartmentalization of population improvement versus product development. And so then for the population improvement, exclusively focusing on a lead by lead process, and then the separation of the variety of parent development or the trait development from population improvement. So having that as having those materials developed out of the population improvement program.
Hi, Jan. Just to break in for a moment. If you wrap up in 5 minutes, we'll have about 20 minutes left for discussion.
Okay, sounds good. So again, partnership is key, and some of our module leads will highlight some of that, so that we can eliminate duplication and we can focus on seeing where we can benefit from bringing skills and services together. So there are some examples that we can highlight. For example, developing breeding information genotyping services, phenotyping services, soil testing, biometrics, nutritional testing, equipment maintenance. So really where we could benefit from combining resources to better serve the breeding programs and take that burden of managing, operations away from the breeders, so they can focus really on the breeding programs. So there are many other things that we can add to that. So another part is important is making sure that we work with our national partners to develop breeding networks and also help support national partner capacity building. So funders are really keen on seeing that interaction, that collaboration between the CG centers and our national partners, and so we must actively reach out to our national partners and to build their strength and capacity and have good alignment between these programs. So funding support, many of you have experienced that. Really, it's center agnostic. We're working towards the One CGI. We'll talk a little bit more about that tomorrow. And we're looking at investing to achieve specific goals, again, within a region, and the focus is on Africa and South Asia. Opportunities to develop centralized operations that will be more effective, and that provides opportunity to develop skill sets among the technical people and career paths for some of these people. And so what we really want to do then is focus on these improvement plans that you submitted last year. So we need detailed plans for management tools for breeding leads, and then setting intermediate goals to achieve these successful implementation. And so maybe looking at, for example, improvement plan, which can be quite detailed and really focusing on the this is just highlighting one objective, for example, realizing genetic gain. So what are some of the actions that we need to do to achieve that? What is the current state? Okay, what can we achieve in 3 months? Then what can we do then, in 12 months? Is it going to be different in 12 months from the 3 months? And then some of the indicators that we can use to measure the progress that we're making. So again, we're all part of the the CGIAR and National Partner Breeding Modernization Initiative. There are many components that are in place for success, and we all are part of this. It's not one person that is driving this or one organization. The breeding leads are accountable for the planning and implementation strategy. Breeding teams are responsible for implementation, and we're there to EiB, that is, for the technical support, the tools and services. And really, what we want to achieve is develop a plan to respond to the mandates from our funders to achieve this, and then execute on that plan. So I'd like to open it up for a question and feedback and some discussion.
Okay, thank you very much, Jan. So I think I have one request right now for a video question. You're welcome to request video questions. If you're having trouble sharing your video, please just refresh your browser and then hopefully that'll work. As well, we may be able to turn to some questions in the chat section. But it looks like we have a question from Wolfgang. So Wolfgang, I'm gonna put you live. Let's see if he's coming. Okay, well, while we wait for Wolfgang or others, please request a video question if you would like to ask one. We have a question in the chat from Jeff Ellers, Jan, and the question is, are there any examples of the EIB helping partners engage with change management consultants? Can and should EIB undertake such matching?
Yeah, that's a good question. Thanks, Jeff. We are just starting on that, and so we're working on setting up a contract and looking at that. See, for change, change affects us all, and it also affects us in an emotional and in a personal way, and so and also in the process of change, we need to make sure that all pieces are in place to be able to achieve the change. And so right now, yes, we are working with a consultant to bring in. I think the first institute that will work on that will be ICRISAT, working with an external consultant to see if, how useful this would be if we bring on a person like that to help achieve the change that some of these programs are trying to implement. Is that helpful? Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Jan. So again, please request a video question if you'd like to ask one. That includes EIB team. If you'd like to ask something, we welcome the video interaction. Let's see here.
Okay, it looks like Wolfgang clicked on the wrong button, so you can,
okay, I see. All right, no worries. Okay, it's mostly comments in the chat section. So while we wait for some questions to come in, yeah, and I was just wondering, so your background was head of breeding with ICRISAT, and so you were an EIB partner, and previous to that, you were in the private sector. How has your impression of EIB and what its mandate should be shifted as you've shifted through those roles?
Yeah, coming from the private sector, you have an understanding of breeding because we have to deliver for our shareholders, not just our stakeholders. And so there's always that pressure to deliver better products, etc. And so they've done out of necessity. They've gone through all the changes to establish very efficient and effective breeding programs. And they had their hiccups. I mean, it's not that everything is perfect in the private sector. And then coming to ICRISAT in my personal journey, really, I was very motivated to help ICRISAT in that journey, and our Director General was on board with that. They had received a strong message from some of the funders. Look, if you really want to achieve this, you need to bring in somebody that has that basis, that has that understanding. So working through that, and there is within the CG, a lot of programs are very project based, and so the long-term breeding pipelines, the production type of mindset was not part of that culture. And so it was working through that change takes quite a bit of effort, because people have achieved success in the way they've done some things, and that is not to be underestimated. They've had some success, but we can accelerate it through bringing in EIB as a partner, and that's what I was really grateful You know, we have people like Eduardo, who's a great quantitative geneticist, and Eng helping us with marker implementation. And now we have a great biometrician, Yonghua, who joined us recently. And then, you know, also Kelly in the time was really instrumental in helping training for BMS. And I think we were really lucky because we had a strong support there already for implementation of BMS. But, you know, the big factor still is, as you're trying to drive change, the technical parts are actually relatively straightforward, easy. You know, it is bringing everybody on board and helping them get to that understanding that, you know, many of us coming out of industry have worked in that type of environment. So bringing them up to speed on what that looks like and what effect it has, what potential impact it has. You know, it's a process because, you know, we're all people with our own understanding and we all have our biases, our backgrounds, our cultures. And so, you know, it's part of it is a cultural change. The way we have to change a little bit the way we work, you know, going from project oriented to really developing an investment case for breeding pipelines and focusing on market segments. So yeah, it's been a great journey, and I found EiB brings a tremendous resource to help the breeding leads in achieving this.
Well, you certainly bring a very interesting and useful background to the position for sure. Okay, so we do have a question in the chat from Hans, who asks, do you see EiB's role changing in One CGIAR? And if yes, what would be different? Now, I know tomorrow you'll touch on that a little bit, but would you like to speak to that a bit?
Yeah, I think, you know, part of One CGIAR is aligned with what we're trying to do within excellence in breeding. And so I think it will be helpful because these things will reinforce each other. One CGIAR and excellence in breeding, and helping us achieve, you know, kind of developing a uniform platform to, you know, with having certain standards in place. So there's definitely going to continue to be a role for excellence in breeding to provide that support, to provide that expertise and guidance and direction on how to achieve modernization. One CGIAR, an integral part of One CGIAR is you know, having breeding programs, you know, focus on product, in the end product development, you know, as basis of that, of course, the population improvement, as we discussed in the presentation earlier. So yeah, I think there is definitely you know, there won't be huge differences under One CGIAR of the role for excellence in breeding. Again, will be reinforced, I think. Other questions? I think I see, looking at the chat here.
My microphone was off there. Yeah, we have a question from our colleague Eduardo, and it's a good one. He asks, what has been the feedback from the heads of breeding and other management staff in the CG, and how can EiB better support them? Because, you know, as a team, we try to apply continuous improvement as well, and we've even gone through the continuous improvement process with the consultant.
Yeah, there's been a good response from the heads of breeding. You know, some of these heads of breeding are pretty new in their role, and you know, they can't get enough support, meaning, you know, that they're anxious for any support they can receive in helping them achieve their. So some of these heads of breeding, they're responsible for breeding programs for up to six different crops, often even, you know, regional breeding programs, if you count that, you know, up to maybe a dozen different breeding programs. And so they have a lot on their hands. they truly appreciate the insight that excellence in breeding can give. And you know, the way the voice that I often hear is, yes, you know, we're willing to implement this. So how do we best then help our management understand what we need to do to implement some of these improvements, to implement the plan that we're proposing here? You know, so you know, how can we make sure that the breeders are part of their KPIs, for which they're evaluated every year? You know, that becomes a more central part for your performance evaluation, as opposed to, you know, just only bringing in funds or publications. You know, it doesn't mean that breeders shouldn't publish. It is really, but you know, they really should focus on their breeding programs. And so I think that is where the heads of breeding, you know, like to have EiB communicate that to the DGs, DDGRs, to make sure that support is there as well. Good. I think, Adam, you're on mute. I can't hear what you're saying.
You should now. Sorry about that. Yeah, again, if anyone has a video question, please just request to share your video, and we'll let you on. There is a question in the comments from Michael Friedman, who asks, with the expanded mandate of EiB, what's the plan for increased support in terms of staff and other expertise? And so how has the structure of the EiB platform changed? And Sam has just shared the link to our staff page, but maybe you could speak to that a bit.
Yeah, exactly. So there is a lot of demand on our team, and we're, you know, trying to make sure that our team is adequately resourced with people, with staff, with experts, with the tools. And so this is actually a bit of a challenge. We're a little bit behind in making sure that we have enough staff in place to really provide on-the-ground support. You know, for Africa, we in the last 6 months we hired Bodo, who's really going to be there in Nigeria, working with the programs in Western Africa to help provide hands-on support. Of course, as you know, Gustavo has been visiting research stations and providing feedback and an assessment of what can be done there to bring it, some of the stations on the more technical part up to par. I know Eduardo has had a tremendous number of workshops that he's held with you know, at least 9 or up to a dozen different breeding programs. You're going through some of the breeding parts in detail, and he's added some people to his team to provide support for you know, model development and simulations, because they're often very valuable in showing what impact some of these changes can have. And now, of course, we brought in Yonghua for biometric support. I think there are a few centers that have decent biometric support, but we saw that it was one of the main gaps that we had is bringing in that expertise and some of that support to our partners. And so we have, you know, one excellent biometrician, a very collaborative person. Those who have interacted with her have experienced that. And then, of course, on the development of EBS, the enterprise breeding system that is, you know, will be released at first for, you know, our CIMMYT partners, maize, wheat, and then rice next year. And then, you know, as we work through the development and updating of that system, it will go out to additional breeding programs. But for now, you know, BMS, many of you have already implemented BMS. again, there's a support. We now have a role of Liz Jones on our team, who joined us in that capacity for adoption support. And you know, as we work with each of the centers to deploy some of the breeding software, she will make sure that things are in place technically, as well as providing training and support for deployment of breeding software. And of course, on the breeding, on the marker side, EiB has developed a great platform for marker deployment with partners, you know, bringing prices down, making sure that turnaround times are met. Tremendous support there. And again, he's expanded some of his team. We're also looking at, you know, with you know, rolling out more centralized services by focusing on you know, implementation of Crops to End Hunger. We'll be having a program in place that can really help with that process. That will be led by Eng. He'll probably talk about that later on and tomorrow in some of the other sessions as well. So yes, we're expanding our team to try to meet that support, and we're also bringing in consultants as well to help meet the demand for providing that support for U.S. partners. Okay, so yeah, thank you, Jan. As you can see, Gary Atlan has joined us on video. So Gary's with the Gates Foundation, who's a our biggest contributor for EIB and a very important voice in the CG. So Gary.
Thanks a lot. Very good presentation, Jan. Very good overview. I've been observing that the suite of changes that we're trying to support and encourage in CG breeding pipelines, breeding networks, is actually really difficult for breeders to conceptualize, for managers to conceptualize, and for support teams like biometrics teams to help out with. And you know, it's not just within the CG that you see these issues around sort of separating thinking about cycle time versus or the population improvement component of breeding systems from the product extraction component, which we have to do to be successful in terms of increasing the rate of genetic gains. I see this when I talk to public breeders, for example, in Canada, where I'm sitting now. And what do you think we need a little more sort of formalized training approach on these ideas? Are we thinking about implementing a mid-career training, professional development program, or should we be thinking about that as we to help equip breeders to implement these changes in their own programs? So I'll pass that on to you. I did notice a question in the chat from about One CG. I can't see the chat now, so I can't recall exactly who it was from, and how One CG may affect funding for ongoing breeding programs as opposed to supporting change management or the improvement process for which EIB funds are sort of earmarked to help out with. The idea with One CG is that the funding we currently get through Window 2 and also through many bilateral grants, for example, the major Gates grants, will then go into breeding via a new modality in One CG. So I hope that the overall funding flow is not for breeding operations is not reduced; it's actually increased. But it won't be through individual bilateral projects anymore. So we would hope that the Gates Foundation, which now only supports Window 3 bilateral breeding projects, will then be able to move its funding into a One CG structure, which would have longer time horizon, less sort of fragmented management and funding and application requirements.
Great. Thanks for that insight, Gary. That's very helpful to bring in that perspective and from the funder side. So on the training, yes, Eduardo last year he had one training session. He was hoping to do another one in the summer. Then COVID hit, of course. So for the next year, Eduardo is planning a week-long training. And really, and of course, there will be the capacity to provide that training will be capped. To make sure that we can do it effectively. But yeah, Eduardo is planning on having a couple sessions next year, 2021, and really, building from making sure that everybody is on the same level, and then making sure then that by the end of the week people are comfortable with understanding simulations and how it can impact their breeding programs. So that is one thing. We've also discussed on working maybe with the breeding school out of California with Rita Mum, and then working with potentially working with universities in Africa, meeting up with them. Bish has been talking to some of the key universities in Africa that already provide breeders training to see if we can better align on making sure that new breeders coming out of those programs are all kind of speaking the same language, that there is some common understanding of concepts, and that there is also opportunity for them to maybe get a little bit more on quantitative genetics and things like that. So yeah, we're working on that, and I think as we go forward, we will continue to provide support through training.
Yeah, I think we need an integrated approach to this. It'll be more than just simulation, and I think the EIB will have to essentially map out the curriculum and then figure out a way to deliver it.
Yeah, and so the course that Eduardo is planning on for next year, will be based on covering some of the basics and then working up towards understanding simulation through by the end of the week. But really making sure that the foundation is laid for that type of training of breeding optimization for the breeding programs.